Do you believe in signs? It took me a hell of a long time to realize that fate sends us signs. So it took me a long time to realize that my wife was cheating on me with my friend. This discovery came as a complete shock to me. Lisa and I celebrated our 3rd anniversary on Saturday with a group of friends, including George and Jane, whose anniversary had also recently passed. Me, Jim, and George were classmates and roommates in our freshman year of college. George, who was studying accounting, talked incessantly about a girl named Lisa from his classes. He aspired to work with her on a team and even joined her study group. Despite his lack of relationship experience, he made an effort to spend time with her academically. I advised him more than once to ask her out. However, he backed off every time the opportunity presented itself. I told him, "You're interested in this girl, just ask her out. You talk to her every day and she seems open to cooperating, so she probably doesn't think you're annoying." But he feared he might ruin the relationship and lose her as a study partner. Then I suggested a brilliant idea. Think about it, she lives in a dorm, so she probably has a roommate. Why don't you ask Lisa and her roommate to join us for dinner and drinks on Friday night? That way it'll look like a casual get-together, not a date. I assumed that my arguments had convinced George and he had the courage to invite her to our meeting. Thankfully, she and her roommate agreed. We had an incredible time together. Jane, Lisa's roommate, possessed the typical charm that has inspired many to do bold things. As time passed and I became more and more involved in the social scene, I became more and more fascinated with Lisa. At the same time, George grew closer with Jane. After graduation, Lisa and George took jobs at a well-known accounting firm. Jane built a career as a dental hygienist, and I found a job with an insurance company as a claims examiner. We found an apartment building near the center of town with 2 separate apartments. Lisa and Jane moved into one, and George and I moved into the other. However, that decision didn't last long. George spent a lot of time at Lisa and Jane's place, while Lisa actually moved in with me. George moved in with Jane, and we changed the lease accordingly. We shared almost every experience together. On a trip to Jamaica with the 4 of us, I proposed to Lisa to be my wife and George proposed to Jane. We decided not to have a joint wedding, but opted for separate ceremonies a weekend apart. Afterward, we all enjoyed a joint honeymoon together in Hawaii. Days were filled with shared activities, and evenings and most dinners were spent with just the 2 of us. Our life plans coincided. We planned to work for 4 or 5 years to save up for a house. Everything was going smoothly up to a point. Thanks to a coworker, George, Lisa, and I were able to work from home 2 days a week. Our offices are only a few blocks apart, so the opportunity to sleep 30 minutes longer and dress casually a few times a week seemed too appealing to pass up. We set up the 2nd bedroom in the apartment as a home office. Lisa worked from home on Mondays and Tuesdays, and I worked from home on Wednesdays and Thursdays. It was the perfect solution to avoid any conflicts when we were both at home. Lisa had already left for work when I started cleaning up our bedroom before heading to the home office. That's when I noticed something under the bed. It was a coin, a regular coin, except we had cleaned the bedroom on Sunday, and I was sure it wasn't there. I looked closely at the coin and recognized it immediately. You see, when George was a child, his grandfather always gave him and the other grandchildren a silver dollar during visits. George's grandfather passed away when George was in high school, and I knew George always carried that last silver dollar with him. During our college years, I saw this coin often enough to memorize the year of issue and every scratch on it. It was George's coin. Sitting on the bed, I couldn't take my eyes off of it. How could George's coin be under my bed? George and Lisa worked together, Lisa at home on Mondays and Tuesdays, and George on Tuesdays and Thursdays. George and Lisa lived 2 floors below us. That bothered me. I knew that George and Lisa usually had lunch together at the office, and on Wednesdays they usually took lunch outside the house. So maybe he just came in for lunch yesterday and happened to be in our bedroom. The coin could have slipped out of his pocket and ended up under the bed. It was probably insignificant, but I needed confirmation. I looked around our bedroom immediately after returning home. Despite the meeting that awaited me first thing in the morning, I tried to distract myself from my doubts. I decided to hide the coin I had found so Lisa wouldn't stumble upon it. It was better to keep it with me. If it turned out to be insignificant change, I could accidentally discover it again and return it to George. During my first call, I got in touch with my manager, Samantha. She was quite an extraordinary person. Samantha, a woman of short stature of about 5 feet, was married to an auto mechanic whose imposing presence at 6 feet 6 inches tall made for an intriguing couple. They had 3 daughters who clearly favored their father. Like me, Samantha also worked from home on Wednesdays and Thursdays. She insisted that the camera be turned on in accordance with company policy. Upon seeing me, Samantha immediately noticed my concerned expression. "What's wrong?" she asked. I hesitated whether or not to get into it. Samantha had been supportive of me since my mother died last year. "I'm not really sure," I admitted. "You know, I found this coin under my bed. It belongs to my friend George. It's a coin his grandfather gave him." During the call, Samantha looked at me carefully with an understanding look. "Now you're wondering why George was in your bedroom, aren't you?" she asked. "George lives 2 floors below with his wife. Interestingly, both Lisa and George work from home on Tuesdays. Tuesdays give them the opportunity to spend time together, but you hesitate to confront her directly, as that might imply mistrust, don't you think?" she said. Yes, I admitted that doubt persisted, but I'd prefer not to cause trouble unless it's something serious. Is there a discreet way to investigate their activities on Tuesdays? I notice we avoid mentioning the word deception. "A friend of mine has a battery-operated hidden camera," Samantha replied. "May I ask if he has one?" A smile ran across my face, hinting at a possible resolution to my doubts. That would be wonderful. I figured it would provide me with peace of mind. "There's an electronics store next to the office. I could buy a camera there on Friday," she replied with a smile. "I'll ask about it, and if it's available, I'll bring it over on Friday." Thank you, Samantha. That night, we immersed ourselves in our tasks. I made a conscious effort to distract myself from my anxiety and tried to act as natural as possible with Lisa. She didn't seem to notice any difference, so we continued our evening as usual. Thursday night, I felt out of sorts despite my best efforts. This problem was weighing heavily on me. When Lisa asked, I simply mentioned that health statements at work bothered me. Lisa realized that such statements often involved acute pain and difficult stories that sometimes touched me. She offered to discuss it, but I declined, giving her a reassuring smile. On Friday, Samantha brought a camera that was compact and easy to hide. She demonstrated its operation to me. The next day, I had to visit my father, which provided a valid excuse to get away from Lisa for the day. He needed help cleaning out the attic and rearranging things in the house, which guaranteed my absence. I also remember that Jane sometimes worked Saturdays at the dental clinic. If anything suspicious was happening on a Saturday, it would give them another opportunity. Lisa was busy in the bathroom Friday night. I set up the camera in our bedroom, hiding it behind an artificial Hawaiian arrangement that Lisa loved and hung on the wall after our honeymoon. The device turned out to be well hidden. Since I was up early Saturday morning, I was able to avoid our usual Friday night hangout. My dad lives in a neighboring town, and since we're trying to save money and don't have a car, I took the bus to get to him. He met me at the bus station, and we immediately got started on a busy day. We sorted through things, realizing that we would have to downsize our possessions. He insisted on carefully evaluating long-hidden items, preferring a thoughtful approach rather than rushing to get rid of them due to time constraints. We sorted through many items for donation and threw many into the landfill. Despite the progress we had made, there was still a lot of work to be done, but we planned to do it gradually over the next few months. He expressed satisfaction with our efforts. During the drive home, my worries resurfaced again. Fred, was worried about the possibility of discovering something compromising on the camera's SD card. Arriving home late, I found Lisa waiting for me, and we decided to order pizza for dinner. While it was being delivered, I took a shower to get rid of the accumulated dust. Although I nervously peeked into the bedroom, I found no signs of recent activity. That night, I pretended everything was fine and went to bed early. I was worried about Sunday night when we planned to visit George and Jane for dinner. Sunday was our traditional time for dinner, which we spent together, switching roles as hosts. I was relieved when Lisa mentioned that she would accompany Jane shopping on Sunday morning. This gave me time to review the material recorded by the camera. I inserted the SD card into my computer and began transferring the video files that had been recorded. Every time the camera caught movement, such as when we went to bed on Friday night or when I left for my dad's on Saturday morning, it recorded everything that happened. Jane usually started work on Saturday at 9 in the morning. Then came the moment I had feared. The video showed that at about 9 in the morning, Lisa had gotten out of bed, as the timestamp showed. Since there was no sound, I could only speculate as to the reason for her awakening. Shortly thereafter, George appeared in the footage next to her. They exchanged a kiss and returned to bed together. I won't go into the details of what happened next, but my best friend and my wife ended up in our bed together. Judging by the timestamps, they spent time there until lunchtime, perhaps actually eating lunch, as the camera did not record any activity at that time. They then returned to my bedroom to continue their business. After lunch, they laid there and cuddled. Later, I noticed that they headed to the bathroom. When they reappeared in the footage, they were wrapped in towels, suggesting that they had showered together. The video also showed them removing bedding, which apparently George had left behind. A subsequent timestamp showed that a few hours later Lisa had remade the bed with the same sheets. I assumed she had washed them. Sometimes I get a migraine, so I figured this was the perfect time for it to reappear. I wasn't about to join these two cheaters for dinner. I quickly uploaded the compromising video to the cloud and to my personal work disk. I wanted to make sure I had backups while I pondered my next steps. I then returned the SD card to the camera and replaced the batteries, as I still wanted to monitor their actions on Tuesday. I also printed out some screenshots and hid them among the documents in my work laptop bag. I anticipated Lisa's imminent return home soon. Earlier, the doctor had prescribed me a migraine medication packaged in blisters. I discreetly threw 2 pills down the toilet, leaving the empty package on the bedside table next to a half-filled glass of water. When Lisa came in, I was already in bed, a blindfold over my eyes. I usually used it to block out light during migraine attacks. Upon seeing the blindfold, Lisa quietly asked if I was having another migraine. I confirmed and explained that there was nothing she could do to alleviate my condition, suggesting that she go out to dinner with George and Jane. In response, she gently kissed me on the forehead, expressed her regret, and convinced me to call her if I needed anything before leaving to help Jane with dinner. Knowing my previous episodes, Lisa realized that I would probably remain incapacitated until the next day. Even without a migraine, I felt no motivation to move. My thoughts were consumed with scenes from the video. I remembered that my office employed a divorce attorney, a typical slippery lawyer who handed out his business cards by the elevators one morning. He claimed that most marriages end in divorce. We had no children and our savings were solely for our future home, so a 50-50th division of assets in the event of divorce seemed uncomplicated. However, I wanted to make sure that if my relationship with Lisa ended, George's relationship with her would end as well. After all, I was going to have to talk to Jane as well, for she deserved to be informed. The idea was finally forming in my head. I needed to discuss it with Samantha. I fell asleep before Lisa got home. In the morning, I assured Lisa that my migraine was gone and I was ready to go to work. I kissed her on the cheek and wished her a good day at work. Upon arriving at the office, Samantha gestured me into her office and closed the door. I sank down in my chair and tears came to my eyes. She understood the reason without even needing clarification. The next step seemed inevitable: divorce. I admitted that I couldn't trust Lisa anymore. Samantha hugged me, expressing her sincere sympathy. There was a divorce attorney working in our office plaza building. We had no significant assets other than bank accounts, and we had no children, so the process should have been relatively simple. However, I asked Samantha for a favor. "What do you need?" she asked. I explained that I would need time today and tomorrow to meet with an attorney, but I was also hoping for her help with another matter. I wanted to make sure that if I separated from Lisa, George would lose her as well. Samantha asked what exactly I needed from her. "Are you still involved with that little theater?" I asked. She nodded. I hoped one of the actresses could help me. I laid out my plan, and after she listened to it, Samantha grinned and assured me she could help even better. "I'll take care of it. Come to work on Wednesday and it'll be ready," she said. "Just bring the coin tomorrow and it will be ready." Leaving Samantha's office, I headed to the first floor to find a divorce attorney in the building's directory room. Upon entering the attorney's office, I found the typical cluttered setup. Boxes of files were scattered everywhere. After speaking with the receptionist, I booked an appointment time for the afternoon. After returning to work, I waited for the appointed time and met the attorney at his office. This room surprised me with its pleasant appearance compared to the rest of the building. If you've come to see me, I assume you're having marital difficulties, the attorney remarked. Yes, my wife is cheating on me, I replied. Do you have any evidence? He asked. Yes, I said, showing some screenshots. Wow, do you know who this other person is? The lawyer asked. My best friend, I exclaimed. That's even worse. I'm sorry, but it's usually easier when it's someone you don't know. Then all you lose is your spouse, he said. What are you trying to accomplish with the divorce? The lawyer asked. Treason doesn't usually affect the distribution of assets in court. I just want to divide our assets in half. We rent. We don't have children. It's just our savings, home furnishings, and retirement funds. I don't care about the furniture. I want half the money, I explained. Okay, he said and pulled out his phone. I heard him say to the receptionist, Jill, could you bring in the 50/50th divorce form? A short time later, Jill walked in with a stack of papers. Sorry for the delay, but legally your situation is pretty simple, she explained. Take a look through these documents. They outline a divorce agreement prepared to meet your requirements. I usually start with this template and then include all the specific details, but this should be enough to get your case started. Study it carefully and let me know if any adjustments are necessary, she said. When would you prefer she be notified? Maybe Thursday at her workplace? The attorney asked. I just need to have the agreement ready by the end of the day on Tuesday to notify her on Thursday, I said. Understood. I'll discuss it this afternoon and get back to you in the morning, assured the attorney. I assured the attorney that I was heading back to my office. Samantha wanted to review the divorce papers with me. During the review, I asked to make the only change. I wanted the wedding rings that belonged to my grandmother back. That evening, I tried to be on my usual behavior with Lisa. Fortunately, she was busy with work on Tuesday and not in the mood for intimacy. That same Tuesday, I went to the bank and opened a separate account for myself, although we continued to use a joint account for banking. We had separate credit cards. The legal paperwork was finalized with the attorney that same day, and he was ready to notify Lisa on Thursday. Samantha was preparing for Wednesday's presentation. Wednesday morning, after Lisa left, I checked my cell. Indeed, at noon they met again. Lisa had changed the sheets, and I assumed she had washed them while she was at work. I now had all the proof I needed. During my lunch break on Wednesday, I took out my camera. Samantha texted me that mission accomplished. I'll call you as soon as I get back to the office. She added a smiley face in the message. About 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was her. How did it go? I asked. Handled it. I even managed to record it on my phone, she replied. It started before I even entered the restaurant. I had it in my pocket. Let me play you the recording. The tape showed the sounds of chatter in the restaurant and the distinct clicking of Samantha's heels on the floor. Then came her voice passing George. There you are. I've been looking all over for you. Samantha had once mentioned that a few years ago she had played a talkative character in a play, a person who wouldn't let anyone else get a word in edgewise. I heard George start to ask, "Who are you?" but was interrupted. "I'm sorry, I left my phone at home, so I haven't been able to reach you. Unfortunately, I have an appointment scheduled for Thursday at our usual time. By the way, you must be Lisa. George mentioned you before you became his date on Tuesday. Doesn't the concept of open marriages fascinate you?" Her tone lowered at first, and then she continued, "I should mention that one of my partners has contracted gonorrhea, so it would be wise to consult a doctor just in case. It's no big deal, just a few pills and everything will clear up." Then she raised her voice again. "I have to run anyway. Oh George, before I forget, you left your lucky coin at my house." She then stopped playing the tape. I grinned. "That was right in the bullseye," I said. Samantha grinned too. I walked out of the restaurant, so I'm not sure what happened inside. I took off my blonde wig and tried to stay in the shadows, but a few moments later Lisa ran out of the restaurant. George was following her. She called him a bastard and declared that she never wanted to see him again. He invoked ignorance, claiming he didn't know who the woman was. Those are the usual excuses crooks give out when they get caught. "Wow," I remarked. Samantha asked, "What's your plan now?" On Thursday, I was generously given the day off. I had arranged for a hotel room. I would rather not be home and not have to deal with Lisa when she would be notified closer to evening. That way, I'd have all day to pack clothes and anything else important. The hotel is nearby, so I can easily move everything there and hopefully be out of the apartment before Lisa gets back. I'll also transfer half of our savings into my separate account. After that, I'll take one of their pictures and go to Jane's dental office to catch her when she leaves. I'll ask her for coffee, and then she and I will have a difficult conversation. I explained to Samantha with a heavy heart that I wasn't looking forward to this evening, but she needed to know about what might happen tonight with Lisa. Samantha asked how I thought Lisa would react. I expressed the assumption that she would probably say it had been a rough day and would prefer to avoid me that evening. I endeavored to maintain my usual routine and was preparing dinner when Lisa came home. I didn't know what to expect, but I was surprised by her unexpected affection. Given the events surrounding George and Samantha, I expected her to be confused, but she seemed determined to solidify our relationship earlier that day. Out of curiosity, I asked how her day had gone. "It's been over a week since we've been close, and I thought we could catch up tonight," she replied before kissing me passionately. For a moment, I thought about the possible consequences if she had contracted an STD from George. Given that Lisa was on birth control, pregnancy wasn't a concern, so why not take advantage of the opportunity? I remembered the story of the man who went to bed with his wife after learning of her infidelity, viewing it as using her as a disposable commodity, and I did the same. Mission accomplished, and Thursday morning, as Lisa was getting up to go to work, she surprised me by offering me some privacy, just in case I decided to include an STD check in my plan for the week before she left. She kissed me warmly and gave me a hug. I anticipated her day would turn out worse, so I started packing since I had arranged for early check-in at the hotel. I started moving my stuff to the hotel that was booked for the weekend. I had already packed some of my things for my dad to pick up since I wouldn't need them yet. In total, my stuff fit into 2 suitcases and 5 boxes. Everything was moved to the hotel before Lisa was served with papers, allowing me to follow my plan without falling behind. My lawyer informed me that Lisa had been served with a letter. I left my phone on to see how she would try to contact me. At first, 5 consecutive phone calls followed. Each was accompanied by assurances of her fidelity. Then followed text messages without text. I responded by sending her 5 pictures from the video of her with George. After that, all communication stopped. I walked 3 blocks to the dental clinic where Jane worked. I wanted to meet Jane, assuming that Lisa would call her and tell their side of the story without revealing the truth about her relationship with George. I arrived in time to see Jane coming out of the building. "Jane," I called out to her. "Leave me alone," she shouted back. Yes, Lisa had apparently already had a chance to talk to her. "Before you go to Lisa, we really need to talk. Just give me 5 minutes," I pleaded. She indignantly replied, "Damn it, what the hell do you want from me?" I admitted that Lisa had been cheating. Confused, she asked exactly what I meant. I tried to keep a calm tone even though it hurt her. "She cheated on you with George," I said. She started to crumble. "Are you sure?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, let's have coffee and I'll tell you everything I know." We settled into a corner of the coffee shop where I shared my discoveries and showed the photos I had brought with me. I purposely didn't show the video of Samantha, preferring to leave it out at this point. She refused to watch the video, bursting into tears. I consoled Jane, for whom the consequences were also significant. Lisa, in an effort to distance herself from George, decided not to contest the divorce. She immediately applied for a transfer to another city to avoid working in the same office as George. By the end of the following week, she had already moved out of town. After she left, I returned to the apartment. Jane had evicted George from her apartment after he came to her apartment several times while intoxicated, banging on the door and begging to see her. She felt unsafe and soon moved in with me. She slept on the sofa bed and I took over my bedroom. Eventually, George relented and agreed to the divorce. Lisa filed a harassment complaint against George with their company's human resources department after the public incident at the restaurant and subsequent rumors about his relationship. He eventually decided to move and start a new job with a different company in a different city. I didn't particularly care about their motives or excuses. They didn't matter to me. However, Jane did ask George about the beginning of their affair, which, as it turned out, had started a year ago. Given George's previous interest in Lisa during college, they decided to find out what they might have missed by working together. They eliminated the need for secret communication channels such as hidden phones or text messages. Instead, they met at work, And on Tuesdays, they simply used work messages to coordinate meetings. They figured that Jane, being meticulous, might discover something if they met at George's home. Initially, they planned to keep meeting until they had saved up money for a house and were ready to start a family. As expected, the promises of the scammers could not be relied upon. 3 years later, Jane and I were unpacking in our new home, each of us having invested 50% of the cost. Thanks to the savings we had accumulated over the past 3 years since our divorce, we had enough for the house and the impending birth of the baby Jane was expecting. After the divorce, both Jane and I first sought counseling separately and then together to work out the reasons for our separation. Eventually, after moving from the sofa bed back into the bedroom, Jane and I began a romantic relationship. Despite everything going on around us, including George and Lisa's actions, our story with Jane progressed. Although marriage was a topic of discussion, Jane's unexpected pregnancy prompted us to take the drastic step of binding ourselves together in marriage. The house we purchased is not far from Samantha's home. Her oldest daughter is now of an age that allows us to hire her as a babysitter for evenings when we want to attend Samantha's performance in her little theater. We are well aware of her outstanding performances. As for Lisa and George, their whereabouts and well-being remain unknown to us, and frankly, we don't pay much attention to them. Our attention is entirely focused on our family's promising future. So there you have it. Write your opinion in the comments about this story. We'll be interested to read it. Also, don't forget to put a like and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss new, no less interesting and exciting stories. Good luck!
Thank you so much for watching my video and your time. Please subscribe to my channel and click on the bell button. Also, I am very interested to know your personal opinion about this story. You can write it in the comments. I will definitely answer you personally.